Welcome back to the channel. Today's story is one people only whisper about, where truth gets twisted and shame hides in plain sight. She was just 43. Beautiful, graceful, and full of life. When her daughter introduced him as the man she wanted to marry, she welcomed him warmly. He was quiet, respectful, always eager to help. He called her mummy like he truly meant it. She had even told her church friends that her daughter had found a real man. But the night of the birthday, everything cracked. They had hosted a small party at home. Her daughter had stepped out to drop a friend, and she stayed behind to clean. That was when he came in. He didn't knock. He didn't smile. At first, she thought maybe he came to get water. She tried to make small talk, wiping the table slowly. But he didn't speak. He just stood there. Then he moved closer. Too close. She backed up, unsure. "What are you doing?" she asked. Still, no words. Before she could take another step, he held her arm. The shock froze her. She struggled. She slapped him, but he didn't stop. And just like that, her life changed in a moment she couldn't erase. She told her daughter. She cried as she spoke. But the girl just stared at her like she was mad. "Mummy, do you know what you're saying? That's my husband." She reported to the elders. They shook their heads in pity. "Maybe you're just lonely," one said. No one believed her. Soon, whispers filled the street. That she was jealous. That she wanted her daughter's husband. That she made it all up. Even church women avoided her. She stopped attending meetings. She couldn't sleep. Every day, she saw him smiling like nothing happened. But silence doesn't bury truth. It only delays it. And the secret she carried alone was about to burn everything down. The living room felt colder than usual. She sat on the edge of the couch, hands trembling, trying to explain what had happened. Her daughter stood across from her, arms folded, eyes full of confusion and disbelief. "Mummy, you're saying, he did what?" She nodded slowly, voice cracking. "He forced himself on me, Ada. I didn't want to believe it myself." Her daughter's face tightened. She shook her head. "No. No, no. That's not possible. That's my husband. He respects you." "He did it," she whispered. "You were not home. I didn't even know he was still in the house. One minute I was clearing the table, the next, he was right behind me." But Ada's hands were already up in defense. "Stop. Please stop. I can't hear this. You must be confused. Maybe you were dreaming." "Dreaming?" She nearly laughed. "You think I'd make this up?" Ada turned her back. Her voice was cold now. "You've been acting strange lately. Ever since we got married. You don't like him. You never have." Her chest tightened. "I welcomed him into my home. I praised him to everyone. You think I wanted this? You think this is easy for me?" There was silence between them. Then the front door opened. He walked in, carrying a nylon bag. He greeted them casually, acting like nothing had happened. Like her world hadn't just crumbled. She stood up and walked past him without a word. But her daughter's eyes followed her, now suspicious. Not of him, but of her own mother. That night, she couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, asking God why truth was so heavy and lies so light. Why her voice cracked while his stayed calm. Why pain had to prove itself before it was believed. But she wasn't done. If they wouldn't believe her words, she'd find something they couldn't deny. The days that followed felt like a punishment. She cooked in silence. Cleaned in silence. Prayed in silence. But inside, something kept breaking. He moved around the house like a king. Calm, smiling, playing with her grandson, making her daughter laugh. He never once looked guilty. Sometimes, he even winked at her when no one was watching. A sick game. She wanted to scream, to throw plates, to run. But instead, she watched and waited. One afternoon, while she was sweeping the sitting room, he forgot his phone on the center table. He stepped out briefly to take a call from the gate. Her heart jumped. Something told her to check. She hesitated, her hands shaking. But she picked it up. At first, nothing. Just chats about football and food. Then she saw a locked folder in his gallery. She clicked. It asked for a code. She almost gave up, until she remembered the date of their wedding. She tried it. It opened. Her heart sank. There were photos. Videos. Some with strange women. Some of her daughter. But one clip stopped her cold. It was the house. Her kitchen. The same wrapper she wore that night. Her voice. His voice. A recording. Not full video, but audio. Clear. She dropped the phone like it burned her. Just then, he walked back in. She turned away quickly, pretending to arrange something. He didn't suspect a thing. That night, she couldn't eat. Her eyes were wide open, staring at the ceiling again. But this time, she wasn't helpless. She now had something. Something more powerful than words. And if no one would believe her mouth, maybe they'd believe a recording. But the question was, how would she show it without putting herself in danger? Because now, she wasn't just dealing with shame, she was dealing with a man smart enough to cover his tracks and wicked enough to smile through it all. She kept the audio clip hidden, buried deep in her own phone now. Every time she played it, her hands shook. It was his voice. His breathing. Her resistance. It was all there. Anyone who listened would know she wasn't lying. But she couldn't just rush out and show people. She needed a plan. That weekend, she asked to visit her sister in Bogota. It was a lie. She didn't go there. She went to a cyber cafe instead, one that still burned CDs and printed from flash drives. The boy at the counter didn't ask questions. He helped her save the clip and print screenshots from the gallery. She put everything in a small brown envelope. She went to her pastor next. Sat quietly in his office, holding her hands together like a schoolgirl. He welcomed her with a warm smile. "It's been a while, Mama Ada. Hope all is well." She placed the envelope on the table. "What's this? Please, just listen." He played the audio. By the third minute, his face had changed. He didn't say a word until it ended. "Why didn't you bring this earlier?" "Because nobody believed me," she said, her voice low. He sighed. "This is serious. I don't want to destroy my daughter's marriage. But I also can't keep pretending." The pastor leaned back, his fingers locked under his chin. "Let me talk to him first." She shook her head quickly. "No. He'll twist it. He'll lie. Let my daughter hear it first." He nodded slowly. "All right. Let me call a meeting. You'll both come. She'll hear it herself. But I must warn you, she might still choose him." Her throat tightened. "I know." She walked home slowly that evening, the Lego sun dipping behind rooftops. Her mind kept flashing to her daughter's eyes, the way they looked at her like a stranger. Would this clip fix everything? Or would it tear everything beyond repair? Either way, silence was no longer safe. The truth was already out of her hands. The church office was quiet that Wednesday evening. A Bible lay open on the table, untouched. The pastor had already sent word to both her and her daughter. She arrived first, holding her bag tight like it was all she had left. 15 minutes later, her daughter walked in with him. He smiled at the pastor. He even tried to smile at her. The pastor didn't waste time. "Please, sit down." Everyone settled. The air was thick. "Mummy," her daughter said, barely looking at her. "I don't know why we're here again. I told you to stop this. She has something to share, the pastor replied. And I want you to listen carefully. She reached into her bag and placed the flash drive on the table. The pastor plugged it in. Pressed play. At first, there was silence. Then the audio began. Her daughter's face changed. The man sat up slowly, his smile fading. The sounds grew clearer. Her voice. His voice. Her refusal. His breathing. Her daughter's hands began to shake. Stop it, he said suddenly. That's not me. But it was too late. Her daughter stood up, eyes wide, hands over her mouth. What is this? What am I hearing? Sit down, the pastor said quietly. Let it finish. The clip ended in silence. The daughter turned to him. You told me she was lying. He stammered. It's edited. She planned this. She looked at her mother. Why didn't you tell me you had this? I wanted you to believe me without proof, she whispered. Tears rolled down her daughter's face. She stood up again, this time trembling. I need to go. He tried to follow her, but she pushed his hand away. Don't touch me, she snapped. Her voice was cracking, her whole body shaking. He looked at the pastor. You're just taking her side. The pastor shook his head. No. The evidence speaks for itself. She sat still. She didn't cry. She just watched the truth hang in the room like smoke. Finally, someone else had heard it. Finally, she wasn't alone. But this was just the beginning. Because once truth starts walking, it never stops until everything in its path is exposed. She didn't sleep that night. Even though the truth had finally found light, her heart still ached. She wasn't angry at her daughter, not anymore. She understood now that love can blind, and shame can silence even the loudest truth. By morning, everything had started to spread. The pastor didn't tell anyone. Neither did she. But someone did, and the streets heard it loud and clear. A church member. A neighbor. No one knew exactly who, but the whispers moved like fire in dry grass. By evening, 2 women from the prayer group knocked on her door. Not to pray, but to say sorry. The same ones who once avoided her in public now looked her in the eyes again. We didn't know, one of them said quietly. She didn't smile. She only nodded. That same evening, her daughter returned home. No makeup. No earrings. Just quiet eyes and swollen lids. She entered the kitchen and stood by the door. He's gone. She nodded. I know. I asked him to pack out. I don't want to see him again. Still, she nodded. You did what you had to do. I'm sorry, Mummy. Her voice cracked. I'm so sorry. She turned slowly, her heart soft but heavy. I didn't want this. I wanted you happy. I wanted peace in this house. I thought you were trying to break us. I thought. She broke down in tears. She walked over and pulled her daughter close, both of them crying quietly. I lost my voice, she said softly. But God didn't. They sat on the kitchen floor, holding each other like mother and child. No more secrets between them. No more pretending. But outside their gate, the world was changing. Some neighbors watched through curtains. Some acted like they hadn't judged her. But the air had shifted. The same man who once smiled and waved now walked past them with his head low. And more stories were starting to come out, about things he did to other women, things no one had dared to speak about. And just like that, what they once called a mother's wicked lie had now become the village's hard truth. He didn't leave quietly. 2 days after moving out, he returned, not to beg, but to threaten. She had just come back from buying foodstuff when she saw him at the gate, waiting. His face no longer held charm. It was pride now. Anger. a shadow of the man her daughter once loved. "I hope you're happy," he said through clenched teeth. "You've destroyed everything." She didn't flinch. "I didn't destroy anything. You did." "You think people will clap for you," he hissed. "You think they believe you." "They don't need to believe me anymore," she said, unlocking the gate slowly. "They've heard the truth. That's enough." He laughed bitterly. "You think you're safe now? This isn't over." She paused and looked him dead in the eyes. "It is for you." Before he could say another word, two neighbors from across the street came closer. One of them held his phone, already recording. "Better leave," the man said. "Before you add more shame to your name." He cursed under his breath and stormed off, but not before glancing back at her one last time. That was the last time she saw him. Later that evening, her daughter got a message, a weak apology typed in rushed words. He blamed alcohol. He blamed pressure. He blamed the devil. But he never blamed himself. She didn't reply. She simply blocked the number. The story had now grown legs. The market women were discussing it. Church members whispered about it between songs. Even the pastor announced in service that victims should never be silenced, that no matter how respected a person is, no sin hides forever. Some people still found a way to blame her. "She's too fine for a mother-in-law," someone said. Maybe she was tempting him. But the women who truly knew her, they stood by her. And slowly, the shame that once wrapped around her like a cloak began to fall off. Her steps were lighter. Her eyes no longer avoided faces. She was no longer just Mama Ada. She was the woman who spoke when silence would have killed her. She started attending church again. The first Sunday, she walked in with her head high. No wrapper over her face. No fake smile. Just peace. People stared, yes. But they no longer whispered. Some nodded in respect. Some shifted to make space for her on the pew. She sat beside her daughter, who now clung to her hand during prayers like a child lost and found. When testimony time came, she stood up. Not to name names. Not to retell the pain. But to thank God for strength. "For a long time, I doubted my own voice," she said softly into the mic, "but now, I know truth doesn't need to shout to be heard. It just needs time." The church clapped. Some wiped tears. Even the pastor looked humbled. After service, 3 different women pulled her aside. One had shaky hands. Another had tears in her eyes. The last one looked angry, not at her, but at her own past. They had stories too. Stories they'd buried. She listened to them. She didn't give advice. She didn't act like a hero. She just held their hands and said, "You're not mad. You're not alone." Later that week, a group of women from church came to her house. They brought foodstuff, cleaning supplies, and a handwritten letter signed by over 20 women. It read, "We believe you. We support you. We stand with you." She couldn't stop crying. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about every woman who had been called liar, wicked, jealous, all because she spoke. And somehow, her pain had become their courage. That night, as she sat on the veranda with her daughter, watching the sky darken over Lagos, she said quietly, "He tried to break me." Her daughter turned to her. "But you stood." She smiled faintly. "Not alone." The breeze was soft. The night was quiet. And for the first time in months, her heart was, too. He didn't disappear like some expected. 2 weeks after the incident, someone said they saw him at a local bar, drinking alone. Another said he had moved in with a friend in Ajij. But no one really cared where he went. His name now carried weight, not the kind that opens doors, but the kind that shuts them. One morning, her daughter received a call from his elder brother. "He wants to speak to you. Just one last time." She looked at her mother. Should I? She simply said, your choice. But remember, closure doesn't always come from hearing them speak. Sometimes it comes from not answering. Her daughter nodded and hung up. A week later, she received court papers. He was trying to file for defamation. He claimed the audio was fake, that she damaged his reputation. It was laughable. His lawyer probably didn't even know the full story. She didn't panic. She took the papers to the pastor and then to a women's legal center her friend recommended. They took the case without charging her. One of the lawyers, a fierce woman with short hair and a voice like fire, looked her straight in the eyes and said, he's bluffing. And we're ready. Within days, the case turned around. They filed a counterclaim with all the evidence, the audio, the screenshots, her original statement to the pastor, and even statements from 2 other women who came forward since the story broke. It was no longer about him and her. It had grown into something bigger. Her name was now being mentioned at women's forums. A local radio presenter reached out, wanting her to share her story. She refused. Not because she was scared, but because her goal was never to be popular. She only wanted her peace. And peace, finally, was something she could touch. Her daughter had started smiling again. The house felt warmer. People who once looked away now greeted her with respect. Her silence had cost her so much. But her voice had brought light into dark places, and it was still echoing. The court date came and went like a passing storm. He didn't show up. His lawyer withdrew quietly after reviewing the evidence. The judge dismissed the defamation case immediately. And with that, the last stone he tried to throw shattered in his own hand. She didn't celebrate. There was no dancing, no loud joy. Just a deep breath, the kind that fills your chest after drowning for too long. Her daughter hugged her outside the courthouse. Thank you for not giving up, she whispered. She smiled, not because it was over, but because she had survived. Weeks turned into months. Life started to move again. She opened a small soup ingredient shop near the bus stop, something she'd always wanted to do. The women in the area supported her, not out of pity, but out of respect. They now called her Mama Courage. Her daughter started volunteering with a women's support group, speaking to other young wives and single mothers about recognizing signs of manipulation and abuse. She always began with the same words, "My mother saved me before I even knew I needed saving." One evening, while sweeping her shopfront, a teenage girl passed by and stopped. "Auntie," she said shyly, "are you the woman from church? The one who spoke?" She nodded gently. The girl stepped closer. "You gave me courage. Thank you." She smiled again. Not wide. Not loud. Just enough. That night, sitting on the same veranda where she once cried alone, she looked up at the stars and whispered, "I thought I was finished. But you used my pain to light the way for others." Her phone buzzed. A new message. It was from another woman. A stranger. It read, "I believe you. I believe in you. Thank you for speaking when others couldn't." She closed her eyes, hugged the phone to her chest, and let the silence hold her. The world would keep spinning. Stories would keep unfolding. But her story, once buried, once mocked, had now become a lifeline. She wasn't just a mother-in-law anymore. She was a voice. A warning. A victory.